Hello everyone and welcome! With today's video, I'm starting with cards that can be given on Mother's Day. They don't have to, these cards can be given on other occasions as well. All you need is to change the greeting. The theme is flowers, maybe some spring flowers as well, a little bit more feminine. Also, this card is another card I made as part of the hashtag Cards for Ukraine. More about it in a bit. To make this card, I'm using a stamp with sunflowers and I'm going to color it with the Zig brush markers, which are water-based markers. I started by stamping the image onto a watercolor cardstock. Some people like to use the Bristol paper when coloring with Zigs, but I prefer watercolor cardstock since the Zigs are watercolors in a marker form. Since I'm using a watercolor cardstock that is a little bit rough, I used the Minimisty stamping tool as I had to restamp multiple times. Then I started coloring. I started with the brown center of the flower and I applied the color in the middle, and using my water brush pen, I spread the color around. If you don't have the water brush pen, you can use normal brush and clean water in a jar. Next, I started coloring the petals. I used two shades of yellow, one dark, one bright, and I applied 2 layers of the color. This is completely up to you. You can use only 1 layer. I actually started with 1 layer and then I changed my mind. I just thought it made the colors more vivid after applying 2 layers. I applied the color to the bottom of the petal, and then with the water brush pen, I spread the color across the whole petal. I colored about a quarter of the flower before moving on the second layer. Of course, you can apply the first layer on all the petals and then move on the second layer, which makes a little bit more sense, and I don't know why I did it this way. The first layer should just be dry before you apply the next layer. For the second layer, I used the dark yellow at the bottom, and above it, I used the bright yellow. I didn't apply any of the marker to the top of the petal because I used the water brush pen, and from bottom to top of each petal I applied clean water. This combines the colors of the 2 markers and it also spreads the color to the top of the petal. And I pretty much repeated this process for each of the petals. As I mentioned at the beginning, this card is part of the hashtag Cards for Ukraine that I've seen on Instagram. On my blog I already made one card, but I didn't film it. I will leave the link to it in the description below. And since then I found out that sunflower is a national flower of Ukraine. Sunflower is one of my favorite flowers, so I had to make one more card. I know it doesn't help, it doesn't change anything. It's just to show that I'm thinking about the people of Ukraine. I'm from Slovakia, which borders with Ukraine, and while I live in Sweden, which is not that far either, I still have family in Slovakia and I'm worried. Everything what's going on, it's so scary, so I cannot imagine how people from Ukraine feel. And I hope it's going to be over soon. I finished the coloring of the petals and then I colored the little flowers. I used the blue for these flowers, and again I used 2 shades, however this time I didn't use water. I only blended the 2 markers together, which is much simpler, especially because the petals are very small. After I was finished with the blue flowers, I painted the leaves and the stems. I only used 1 shade of green together with water. I applied the color to the bottom of the leaf, and then using the water brush pen, I spread the color across the leaf. And I finished up by using a light gray marker around the stamped image, and I spread the color with my water brush pen. You don't have to do this, but I wanted the flower to have some kind of a background color. I would say very light blue and green would be also okay if they don't clash with the other colors of the flower. After the panel was dry, I stamped the greeting. The stamp set with the sunflower does have nice greetings, but I wanted to have a more neutral sentiment. So I picked this stamp set with a bunch of sentiments, and I picked the greeting that says with love. And I stamped it at the bottom of the panel using black ink. Lastly, I adhered the panel on top of a card base that I made out of craft cardstock. To adhere it, I used a simple double-sided tape. I also trimmed the cardstock a little bit just to make it slightly smaller than the card base. For me, it makes it easier to adhere. I was thinking about adding some embellishments, but in the end I decided not to. So this is the finished card. I absolutely love it. I really like coloring with water-based markers like the Zigs. I just feel they just make it much easier to paint compared to the typical watercolors. And I hope this inspired you to take out your water-based markers and paint. It doesn't have to be a sunflower, it can be whatever stamp set you have in your stash. And if you don't have these markers or stamps, just click on one of the videos on your screen. In both, I painted sunflowers completely from scratch. So that is all for today. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you soon.